Hello and welcome to this webinar about community benefits in procurement. My name is Kate Christie and I work for Lintel Trust, Scotland's housing association charity. Lintel Trust has worked in partnership with the Scottish Procurement Alliance since 2016 to deliver their charitable community benefit fund. We also offer advice and best practice guidance in the effective use of the community benefit clause in public procurement. This presentation will provide you with an overview of what community benefits are, when they apply, and what you should consider at the earliest stage of your procurement journey. So starting with the basics, a simple description of community benefits is tangible, positive outcomes which improve the lives of local people and enable communities to thrive. You should already have a procurement policy in place at your organisation, which aligns with the principles of fair working practices, equality and transparency. Alongside local authorities, housing associations must be able to evidence a fair procurement process, whether that's through an open tender exercise or through a framework provider. So why does it matter? There is a huge amount of money being spent on goods and services in Scotland. It's a great opportunity to boost local economies, to improve lives and to share responsibility for our communities with private sector contractors, many of whom rely on most of their income from public sector. Scottish public sector spends roughly £8.3 billion per year on goods, services and works. Registered social landlords are independent, but they're heavily regulated, and as they're part funded by government, they're treated as a public sector authority when procuring goods and services, which essentially means that they're treated in the same manner as a local authority would be. Decreased funding for local authorities and statutory services makes the effective use of community benefits even more important than before. With the UK economy at a low point after the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact of Brexit, good planning and collaboration with contractors is vital. The current cost of living crisis has hit housing communities the hardest, and registered social landlords across Scotland are doing their best to assist in whatever way they can. Scottish Government wants to ensure that this large investment is spent in a way that can deliver the most benefit to society. Each of the UK nations has a slightly different approach to procurement. In Scotland, the legislation that applies to us is the Procurement Reform Scotland Act 2014. Essentially, procurement activity can be divided up. Non-regulated procurements are worth less than £50,000 and are subject to far fewer rules. However, once the price of something is over £50,000, it is considered a regulated procurement and it must be advertised on Public Contracts Scotland and following strict guidance. The Act really applies where contracts have a value of £50,000 or more, except worked contracts where the threshold is £2 million. Regulated procurements over the threshold are subject to a sustainable procurement duty, which I will explain shortly. Procurement legislation obliges a public body to include the community benefit requirement in contracts with a value of over £4 million, although most public authorities purchasing goods and services will usually include a community benefits element to every contract that they have. So the sustainable procurement duty is something that needs to be included in any kind of contract over £50,000. The sustainable procurement duty aligns with Scottish Government's purpose to create a more successful country with opportunities for all of Scotland to flourish through increasing sustainable economic growth. The duty requires that before a contracting authority buys anything, it must think about how it can improve the social, environmental and economic well-being of the area in which it operates, with a particular focus on reducing inequality. Essentially, it means consideration must be given to how an authority buys anything. It must facilitate the involvement of small to medium enterprises, supported businesses and third sector organisations, as well as promoting innovation. It means working towards sustainable development goals, which then feed in turn to the Scottish National Performance Framework. Looking in terms of best practice, we have some basic guidelines to follow. Purchasing bodies should have a formal procurement strategy and accompanying policy in place to ensure that they have a clear, consistent approach to community benefits. All community benefit requirements must be specified in the published contract notice and a specific community benefit weighting included in the tender evaluation. Community benefit requirements must be objective and must not directly or indirectly discriminate against or disadvantage any bidder, individual or group protected under the protected characteristics of the Equality Act 2010. Community benefits should be directly related to the core purpose of the contract. The good news is that despite the huge disruption caused by the pandemic and various other factors, Scottish public sector has continued to make progress in delivering against public procurement objectives. SMEs accounted for over 50% of procurement spend in Scotland in 2020 to 21. Almost half of the spend in Scotland was spent with suppliers based in Scotland's most deprived areas. 3.6 billion of spend in Scotland was with suppliers based within the local area of the purchasing body. This is evidence that things are going to plan. Sometimes people have been confused about which stage community benefits should be included. They should be considered and identified at the pre-procurement stage. If included in the contract, the community benefit requirement and weighting percentage must be stipulated. Benefits must be deliverable, proportionate and relevant to the contract. It's common sense. You wouldn't ask a company delivering a factoring service to deliver digital inclusion sessions. There should be named individuals in both organisations that will be responsible for the monitoring and reporting on community benefits. Evaluation of community benefits should be completed before the end of the project, and lessons learned should be shared and referenced in future plans. This is a really important stage, particularly the pre-tender engagement. I cannot highlight how important it is to engage with your community at the earliest possible stage to find out what their priorities are, what they want and need, and what will actually benefit their community the most. When looking at the Scottish National Performance Framework values, it's a good way to help to pin down what we would like to ask for in terms of community benefits. By and large, most of the activities can be captured under the economy, the environment, health, communities, people, places and sustainability. When looking at areas to consider in terms of community benefits, we'll have a look closer at what the headings in the slide before cover. So environmental improvements is a really important part of community benefits and also is something that you can regularly see. Being able to see the community benefits often helps the local community feel more engaged. So an environmental type action would involve zero waste and recycling projects, provision of resources to support local community gardens, communal areas, derelict areas. There could be donations of plants, turf, seeds. Volunteering time is very popular, and also lending equipment. Now, many of these things don't actually cost anything additional to your contractor, but they can make a massive difference to your community. Historically, the thing that's been very popular has been employability opportunities. Again, when we're looking at empowering communities and giving them options, employability is obviously a key element of that. Apprenticeships have historically been the go-to solution, but for smaller contracts, I would definitely recommend looking at other options, such as work experience placements, site visits for schools, mentoring programs for youngsters leaving school, non-academic training courses, vocational training, looking at gaining accreditation, and also supporting local youth initiatives. In addressing equality issues, it might be worth looking at sections of the community that historically have not engaged and find out why, find out how you can tempt them with an offer of employability solutions. We also like to see opportunities for those furthest from employment, and there are some excellent initiatives encouraging ex-offenders back into the workplace. Another area is community. So you can have a little look at existing community groups and capacity building in those. You can ask for support for community events. So for example, sponsorship of an annual get-together community day. Other options would be donation of goods or equipment or use of facilities, donations of expertise, volunteering times from employees of a certain organisation. Also, some places will provide funding for local sports teams. They might donate either a block of money or some time, or they might even volunteer to upgrade community facilities. Again, it's really important that you work with existing groups, with new groups, you have a community engagement session and find out about the priorities. When we have a look at the use of small to medium enterprises and third sector support, in most cases this is quite easy to achieve. In Scotland we have a rich history of social enterprises and not-for-profits. By including third sector organisations in subcontracts, supply chain and delivery of services, it extends opportunity for local economies. When you are looking at unregulated procurement, so smaller jobs, consider a small to medium enterprise, a local supplier, someone who's perhaps built up a reputation locally. You can also ask your supplier to offer support for the Supplier Development Programme, which is a programme put in place to encourage smaller organisations and third sector organisations to start bidding for public procurements. You can encourage collaboration with local social enterprises and also the use of supported business. Again, keeps them going and it does support your local economy. In other contracts, you can look at digital participation as one of the key priorities. This can include the provision of hardware or software, the provision of facilities or resources to provide community digital inclusion sessions. They could organise drop-in sessions, funding for a digital club, volunteering expertise or advice. It very much depends on who is providing your procurement activities. So for example, making it relevant, you wouldn't ask an IT company to come round and paint walls. It makes no sense. You would need to utilise the skills that they have in-house, and that is going to give you the best possible benefits. There has been a bit of history between contractors in private sector and housing providers. I cannot stipulate enough how important early engagement with contractors is. You can engage with contractors prior to advertising your project. They might have a cost-cutting idea, replacement of materials, phases of your plan. They'll have lots of experience and you can discuss local needs with them. They may have experience working in your area. They might be aware of local challenges. Providing you make all this information available to everybody who might want to tender for your project, then it is still fair. Early engagement is really important and can pave the way for excellent relationships when working together. You can specify what you're looking for in terms of community benefits and encourage early engagement with local people and your appointed company, because that means that you're both clear on expectations and the community is kept updated and involved in all the work that's being done. Essentially, you want the people who are impacted by the works or services to directly benefit from them. It helps address any inconvenience caused, particularly in new developments or developments that involve demolition or mess and upheaval. For example, replacing doors and windows, replacement kitchens, retrofitting older properties. They're messy, they're inconvenient. So the more that you can evidence a direct benefit to the community during these works, the more positive local people are likely to feel towards your own organisation. Many contractors are very experienced and they're committed to improving the communities that they work in. Larger construction companies might have an area of expertise that might be especially useful to people in your area. One thing I would say is that one size does not fit all. So communicate with your contractor, agree an approach that's proportionate to the contract and it meets the needs of your community, and then you've set yourself up for a happy and easy procurement. Contractors are usually happy to work with housing providers. If employability is a goal, try and engage with local schools, colleges and existing employability services prior to agreeing on the community benefits. What you don't want to do is duplicate something that's already happening locally or address a problem that isn't actually a problem within your personal area. Be realistic in what you ask for. As I said before, an apprenticeship is a big commitment and the length of contract and the value has to match it. A little bit of discussion early on is quite often the route to a successful collaboration. As experienced housing providers, we know that every community is different and has different needs. What is relevant to an urban built-up area might be completely different to the requirements of a rural community. We know that early engagement with community is the key to delivering successful community benefits. It also helps get local people on side, so the earlier you engage with them, preferably before you've even started putting out the work for tender, you need to speak to your existing community groups, any social media groups like Facebook talk groups, local councillor where it's appropriate, ensure that your newsletter puts out your intentions, and hold a community event, give opportunities for people to feed back, to provide you with ideas about what you're doing, and encourage people to say what they would like to see, allow their voices to be heard. If you can get people participating as early as possible, then it really does pave the route to a smoother ride. Essentially, all of us want to empower our communities to access opportunities, whether that's through jobs, social engagement, improvement to their areas, access to digital services and devices, support, even a donation to a giving fund. So for smaller jobs that might be more appropriate. So a donation to support a local activity such as a craft group, a men's shed, a mental health awareness group, any kind of activity that's already being undertaken and is short on funding would be very happy to receive funding. In fact, several housing authorities and local authorities have gone a step further. So for example, in Perth and Kinross Council, they have an Angels Share wish list. Essentially, local groups and part of the community, they can apply and put on their wish list the things that their group wants and needs. So it might be resources, it might be expertise, it might be an upskilling exercise. It could potentially be a donation to allow them to buy a new piece of equipment. Generally, if there's going to be a community benefit fund put in place, there's normally a third party who administers this. And this is particularly common in areas with renewables such as wind farms. They will designate a third party to administer their community benefit fund, and it's available to all local initiatives. This can be a nice non-threatening way for smaller organisations that might be new to community benefits as well, is if you allocate points to each activity, that also gives them a slightly better idea of where they can use their expertise the most effectively and to the most benefit for the communities involved. So we've come to the end of our webinar about community benefits in procurement. I'd be very happy to answer any questions or go into it in more detail if anybody would find that helpful. You can find contact details on the last slide. Alternatively, you can visit the Lintel Trust website, which is www.linteltrust.org.uk, and all of our contact details are held there. All that remains to say is good luck with your procurement activities. I have no doubt at all that you'll be able to include relevant and important community benefits that really bring value to your local community. And I'd like to say thank you very much and good luck.